nurturingconnectionshomeschool.com, where I share encouragement and resources to help you connect with what matters most. Now today we're talking about reading. Reading is an area that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I thrive on. I love reading. I read a ton to our children. My background was in English language arts and reading. I was an English teacher for middle school, and then I worked as an educational specialist for grades K through 12 in the areas of English language arts and reading. So this is an area that I loved. I thrived in. I worked with children who struggled along the way. I worked with high school students who struggled in reading. And so when it came time to teach my own children, I was blown away by all the homeschool curriculum that was available. I will say that early on, I kind of pushed aside everything I knew about reading to follow some curricula. And when it didn't work along the way, I didn't realize that I could have done things a little differently that would have helped me be more successful with my children. I do have two children who struggle more so with reading, and I have one who flew through reading and was reading by 3 years old. So curriculum sometimes doesn't always make all the difference. It's how we use those curriculum choices that will make the biggest difference in our children's reading abilities. So I'm going to share with you what we used along the way. What worked for our family may or may not work for yours, but I just wanted to share some options and then some tips along the way that could help you with whatever curriculum you are using with your children to teach them how to read. Now, before I jump in, I do want to share a personal story with one of my children that I feel could be helpful for some of you. One of my children struggled immensely with reading, but what I found with a curriculum change, so we were using IEW, the beginning reading program, reading and writing, and we found that this child struggled a lot with it. So we switched over to All About Reading. And what I found there that was a big aha for me was that this child could read flashcards pretty easily, but struggled when it came time to read the book. And so I took this child to the doctor to see if they needed glasses, if there was something going on, and it turned out that he had eye convergence insufficiency. So what that means is that the eyes were unable to converge and hold that convergence during the reading process. And so we also saw that carry over into other things like catching a ball where the eyes have to come together. And so we were able to go to a pediatric ophthalmologist at that time and do eye exercises on the computer to train those eye muscles in order to come together to support reading. So I share that with you because that's something that I didn't know personally about. We just thought either you need glasses or you don't, and this has nothing to do with glasses. It's more about those muscles and training those muscles to work together. And it's something that could be very prevalent, but a lot of people don't know about it. So a lot of children go undiagnosed. So I wanted to share that first. Once you have eliminated any physical barriers to reading, then there are a number of resources you can use out there. We started off with All About Reading, and I'll share some pictures up above. But All About Reading is based on the Orton-Gillingham method. It is purely phonics based, and so they learn the letters and their sounds, and within a couple of days they are reading words. There's a lot of hands-on activities. You know, you flip the cards and move the cards and feed a monster with those words, so that the child is using that kinesthetic sense while they're reading the words in order to get that practice and repetition. Now, the way it's set up is one day you learn a phonics rule and you get a list of words to practice, and then the next day you read a little story from the reader, and it just kind of goes back and forth. Now this works out pretty well. What's neat about the readers is that they are based on the phonics rules that have been taught. So they're not given any new words in those readers until they are taught the specific rules they would need to sound out those words in those readers and read them successfully. Now there are 4 levels in there, and then they also have a pre-reading piece. So I did not know about the pre-reading curriculum until my second child. So we did use that one, and it just has the letters, their names, and their sounds. And so it's just that foundational piece. that a lot of children need to be able to feel more comfortable once they start sounding out words and beginning reading, which is in level 1. Now, pros and cons all about reading. It is a great program. Like I said, there are 4 levels going all the way through. They deal with comprehension. They talk about a number of different comprehension themes, phonics rules, and so forth. And it worked really well for us for a couple of levels in. What happened with us in the 2nd level is it started to pick up, and I found that one of my children was still struggling with some of those pieces, and we just kind of got stuck somewhere. Now, note to self, something I've learned along the way: when you get stuck in a reading curriculum, do not feel the pressure to keep pushing through. Sometimes it's a developmental delay. Sometimes the child just needs to kind of step back a little bit and develop in certain areas in the brain, and then they'll pick it up again and just fly through it. I wish I had known that back then. What I probably would have done was just put a pause button there, gotten all the words that child had learned up to that point, and make games out of them, make flashcards, write the words, play with the words, read other readers, or practice the readers we had already done, and just do them over and over and over again, because children by that level just need the repetition. And so I encourage you that whatever curriculum you're using, if you find that you get stuck somewhere, it's not the time to just throw out the curriculum and try something new. Sometimes it just takes a little break in there to get things moving along again. So note to self, I didn't know that at the time, and so I stopped using that altogether. And then what we used next was Rod and Staff. Now, Rod and Staff is a little more dated. It's something that's a little older. It's made by a Mennonite company. So you will see that the children are dressed a little differently. The adults are dressed a little differently. For us personally, that was not a problem. We just talk about different cultures and different beliefs, and we're okay with that. But what I loved about Rod and Staff, that was a big game changer for us, was that it taught the phonics rules, which I am a strong proponent for phonics instruction. Children absolutely need phonics instruction. So pause here for a moment. There's been a big push in our public school system and in even the homeschool community to just teach with sight words. And for some children, that seems to work beautifully. They are memorizing these words and memorizing these words. But what I found with my own experience in working with high school students and middle school students, there tends to come a place where those words get more and more challenging. And if they don't have the tools and the skill set to be able to phonetically sound out those words or to understand why they're spelled a certain way, then they tend to struggle more as the expectation gets harder and more challenging. So I encourage you, whether your child is a fantastic reader or struggling with reading, make sure that they have a foundation in some sort of phonics instruction. Something simple that you can do along the way for a more advanced reader is something like Explode the Code. We love those workbooks. They just do a couple of pages a day, and it just keeps them focusing on those phonics skills and spelling skills. So for us, we used Rod and Staff, and so that's what I'm coming back to. They do have a strong phonics component. So Rod and Staff begins in 1st grade. They do not do a formal kindergarten with children. And in level 1, that's when they start their actual letters and sounds and phonics instructions. So the current version of Rod and Staff Phonics looks like this. It has a teacher manual that's huge, but what's in here is everything you'll need for the phonics instruction, for spelling, and penmanship. It's all worked into here. Now what the child does is a workbook like this. And so each workbook is for a different unit. So there are about 15 lessons in the first unit, and then about 30 or 25 to 30, 30 in the next one, and so forth. And so in here, they get 4 pages of practice per lesson. And so that's something that's a little different than their previous edition. So I used the previous edition with my other 2 children before this one came out, and there were only 2 pages of practice. So I like the 4 a little bit better. You can always skip them if you don't need them, but I found them helpful. It breaks it down really, really slowly. This is unit 3, and so they get a new rule. You can see here, they'll practice it here. All the instruction is in the book, and then you practice it. You can do some matching activities, and then there's always an edge list to practice. And so the child is timed after they've practiced that about 6 times. They bubble it in right there. And then you are charting their progress at the very back. They have a little chart where they can color in how many words they read in that 30 seconds and then see their progress along the way. So they have the phonics component, but at the same time, they have reading where they are doing sight words. And so the child is able to read pretty quickly from the very, very beginning. Now in the latest edition, it does wait about 15 lessons to teach them letters and sounds to get them going, but they start reading pretty quickly. And so you'll see here, it starts off with just God. It is a Christian-based resource, so that is something to keep in mind if that's important to you. It's going over Bible stories, and you'll see here it does start off with when they start to actually read, and it picks up pretty quickly. So they will learn God, and then God made light on day 1, and it goes through the days of creation. But you can see what they're already reading in this particular lesson. It picks up pretty quickly. So they have flashcards available. I just made my own because once they get the hang of it, they can zoom them pretty quickly. And then they have a reading workbook where they are looking for these words or highlighting the words and memorizing them. But what ends up happening along the way, after about units 1 and 2, the phonics and the reading comes together. And so they start seeing how those phonics rules helps them sound out those reading words that they're coming across. And so you'll see here along the way that sometimes they'll use keywords like, okay, you already know how to read one, so now you can read ones, and who, so now you could read whom. Sometimes they'll have a sight word like this because it hasn't been taught in phonics just yet. But then they also have a list like here where it's sounded out. You should be able to sound out these words because you've had that phonics instruction and you know those rules and you know why they work. So putting these 2 pieces together was amazing for my children. I had the child that was coming out of All About Reading, sounding out every single word, you know, app, map. And everything was sounding out that piece, and it was just kind of hindering that progress. And so when we went to this, and it was like, this just says made, this says light, and memorizing that, then the brain was just able to make those connections, and that child was able to pick up reading very quickly. My 4-year-old picked up reading very quickly also with this program. And so it's something that I keep coming back to time and time again. What I also like about this program is that penmanship is included in here. So you'll see some tracing pages on there. And then spelling, so they start practicing their spelling words as well after they do like practicing the letters and so forth. So you'll see spelling is included as well. So there's that spelling practice. And then if your child needs additional practice, then they actually sell practice pages that you can also purchase in addition to that, and this whole thing of black lines that you can make copies of. So you can do as much or as little as you'd like. That has been really helpful to me. I don't use everything here, but I can use the extra practices when that child needs extra practice, or I can taper it back when they don't need that extra practice. Now, along the way, we also used Heart of Dakota, so they recommended the reading lesson, which is this one here. And it is basically phonics instruction all the way through. And there are 20 lessons with different, components to it within each and every one. They don't teach the capital letters from the beginning. It starts off with the lowercase letters, as you can see there. And so as they begin reading very, very quickly and practicing those words, Then it introduces those a little bit later. But they will practice the sounds, so it is phonics-based, and they'll have little stories to read just like that. You can kind of see some more examples. They'll practice their words. I found that this was really helpful for my child that took off very easily with reading. This is something you just do a couple of pages a day, 15 to 20 minutes. Once they start taking off with it, they can do other readers and just fly from there. I've also used this in addition to rod and staff. So when a child gets stuck, like I mentioned with All About Reading, what happened to us before, this is something that you can kind of supplement with and kind of go back just to get that repetition, just to get that practice until they're ready to move on. So I've held on to this over the years. You can tell it's worn pretty well here and there, but I like having it as a resource to use whenever they just need that additional practice and things. Now I'm gonna back up a little bit. Before I used rod and staff with my third child, what I did do was start writing my own curriculum. I found that with this child, reading or identifying the letters was very difficult for some reason. A lot of children have dyslexia. Some just, again, struggle with the way their eyes are perceiving things. And so I wanted to help her as much as possible. And so I put together Nurturing Connections in Reading Level A. Now, she was the inspiration behind it all, but it has been such a joy to put together everything I've learned about reading over the past 20 years into something tangible. And so before we ever did any of this, she started off learning through that program. And you'll see here, it uses a multisensory approach. You can see the letters that they practice there look exactly like those picture cues that help them, and then they practice them in the boxes here. And these are all laminated. So, you know, the F was for flower, and it would kind of, the sound was there, the visual cue was there, and then they would just practice them. And then it picked up very quickly to decoding the words and practicing them through tracing exercises. And we just did a number of things. It's super hands-on. There were 3 books that look like this, and at the end of each book was a little assessment piece where you could keep track of that child's progress. Did they learn the letters? Did they learn the sounds? Could they match the capitals and the lowercase letters and so forth? So I have a whole overview on this curriculum that I put together. I did start writing level B for her. It went extremely well. It's just that I didn't have the time to continue writing it at the time, and I needed her to continue moving forward. So I'm still kind of pulling pieces here and there, but for now we're back on with rod and staff, and it's going well. It's going well. What matters at the end of the day is not what curriculum you choose, but it's being intentional. It's being purposeful, it's being consistent, getting that practice in every day, line by line, precept by precept, until the child is able to make those connections. I want to encourage you, read aloud to your children, read a lot of poetry and rhymes. Those are so very, very important. Do finger plays so that, again, they're getting that movement and activating those parts of the brain. Do something fun, keep it light. If you try doing something and they are just not developmentally ready for it, take a few steps back, take a deep breath, continue reading aloud to them, but do not worry. A lot of children do not develop that ability till they're 7 years old sometimes. And so you can wait a little bit longer. I give all the instruction or information on that in my teacher's manual of Nurturing Connections in Reading. That manual is available for free in my member freebies. So if you have a child who's struggling, there are some tips in there to consider. There's some things that keep in mind. It breaks down what you need to know about teaching a child to read. But at the end of the day, once you're giving effective phonics instruction, what's most important is that they're getting practice. And so finding readers like pathway readers, we love, love, love the pathway readers. We have these on hand. These have been really, really good to get that repetition in once they were able to read a large number of words. It would have the words here. You'll see here, this was the part that I would read. So it starts off very gently, and then the child reads that little piece. And then it progresses pretty quickly. So again, you have your new words here and your text to read along the way. Now after that, the words are in the back of the books, and so you'll have all the study words there. And then again, once they have a strong foundation in phonics, you can carry that over. Why is it spelled that way? It could be your spelling words. You can do word patterns and word families with that. Just a number of things and activities you could do, but getting that repetition is important, and that's what readers do, is they provide that continuous repetition for the child to feel more and more confident in their reading abilities. Other examples of readers we've used are these from Christian Light Publications. These are really, really sweet. This is for 2nd grade, so by that point, after they finished with Rod and Staff, I usually went into this. But what I loved about these books is that they always tied back to a scripture. So every story would have a scripture to focus on. Then it would have a little story that exemplified that scripture in some shape or form. And then it also had poetry worked in here and so forth. So this is the 2nd grade one, or level 2, I should say. And then we've also started using the McGuffey readers. And so this is something that's been a little new to me in the past couple of years, but definitely something I'm exploring. I love, again, the challenge of these texts, the rich vocabulary. The stuff from back then, I'm finding, is just so much richer and so much more challenging. And I found that so many of those instructional principles that were successful in the past are still successful today. I know that coming from the public school world, that there's this whole push in progressive education, and they don't need that repetition, and don't drill and kill. But I will say that the way children learn best in the younger years is through that repetition, is through engaging the 5 senses, and it is through positive experiences. And so whatever curriculum you choose to use with your child, create those positive experiences with them. Be intentional, be consistent, and they will learn to read. They will. So hang in there. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions on reading or teaching a child to read, please drop them below. I'd really like to know how I can further help you in this area and share more insights and tools that can be helpful to you. If this was enjoyable as well, please give me a thumbs up. It's an easy and free way to support my channel. I appreciate you being here. I'll see you next time.